Welcome to the Writing with Purpose podcast, where I, Anna Woolliscroft, chat with fellow writers and outdoor enthusiasts about how we can embrace creativity and curiosity to live a life full of adventure that doesn't feel like hard work. I delve into exploratory conversations about my two loves in life, writing and nature connection, as part of my mission to share the wellbeing benefits they both bring. It's wonderful to have you here today. On today's Focused Nutrition episode, I speak to Rachel Philpott, a nutritionist, functional medicine practitioner and mental health expert, as she talks about healthy nutrition to support positive mental health and avoid burnout. Hi, Rachel. Thank you very much for joining me on the Writing with Purpose podcast. And I'm very excited to be launching the focused series on nutrition. And you're the first guest to join me on that. So thank you very much. And today we're going to be talking about healthy nutrition and how to support positive mental health and avoid burnout by looking after yourself. So thank you very much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So, Rachel, you are a functional medicine practitioner and a registered nutritionist, and you specialise in mental health and champion natural ways, which are always the best, to improve well-being and optimal mind and body health. You're a published author, which will come on to your book a little bit later in the podcast. But you typically work with independent, high-flying career women to improve their mood, help them to feel revitalised, re-energised and restored. Now, would I be right in saying that this current path and what you do now has come from experience of your own lifestyle choices, shall we say, and near burnout?
Yeah, 100%. So before I set up the clinic and became a nutritionist, I had a successful corporate career for 13 years. However, I did end up burning out myself as part of that. And it was coming out of my own experience of burnout that really inspired me to make a change and leave the corporate world behind, retrain, and then set up the clinic. I guess I really saw how important nutrition and lifestyle change was to supporting mental health, and I hadn't realized that before experiencing it myself. So I just wanted to help other people, and that's why I decided to pivot and go back to the university and completely new career path.
Yeah, and it's a great story, really, isn't it? I think, when people have gone through something themselves and then they make those changes and they are life transforming changes as well. It's just so much more impactful when you're working with somebody that you can help, because you can see some of perhaps the elements within them that you've experienced. But it's just so fulfilling as a career that you're able to help people.
Yeah. I think it does help that you can that you've walked the walk and you can talk their language, because I've been there, I've been in that environment. So I'm deliberately kind of helping women who resemble myself 10 years ago because I can really relate to them, and I kind of wish I knew then what I know now, so if I can give that back to others and help support them, then I've done my job well.
Yeah, and I think there's always a point that, well, not always, I shouldn't say that, but there's a typical point that people reach in life, especially women, sort of, from maybe early to mid-30s to about mid-40s, where something happens, be it, a milestone, perhaps achievement or an issue that, just sort of throws everything up in the air that we've experienced so far. And then that causes us to make a change, and, a change for the better, of course, and then move forward in a completely different path.
Yeah, I think, and for me as well, that was certainly, I think that elements of my burnout were happening, perhaps even earlier on, but I coped with it then, and I was more resilient when I was in my 20s.
Yeah.
And I think when you enter your 30s, you almost expect yourself to be able to perform in the same way, but it's all one big accumulation of everything that's gone before. And that's why I think I experienced it at that age. And I think as well, for for women in particular, when we are in our 30s and 40s, there's more going on in life that perhaps wasn't happening in our 20s. And that kind of adds to all the pressure and the stress that we might be facing at that time. So yeah, it is interesting how um, we're perhaps also less tolerant of some of these things, and we want to kind of understand a bit more about ourselves, and we're kinder to ourselves at that age as well, and want to reach out for help, whereas perhaps in our younger age, very, very generalistic, this statement, but I think being younger, you do feel a bit more like you're just carrying on regardless. Whereas I think when we're in our 30s and 40s, we're more ready to reach out for help and maybe make that change.
Yeah, I think you're right. What you said earlier on, that we're sort of more resilient during our 20s almost, and
Yeah,
we can recuperate from things a lot easier. Our body seems to
definitely.
be more efficient just in general, whatever we throw at it. And then we reach 30s, 40s, our bodies are starting to change then anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, we can be just a little bit, well, there must be more to life, or put yourself first when you
Yeah,
realize you're perhaps putting
definitely.
others or career before your own health. And it's a series of realization moments. That's certainly what I went through anyway, because I don't know if I would say that I burnt out completely, but I was definitely almost there twice. And I didn't really ask for help, but I made changes myself in my own life.
Yeah.
But then it was afterwards, when I was talking to people, they said, "Oh yeah, you look really ill," and I was really concerned about it. And I thought, well, why didn't you say anything?
It's these things that you can't see yourself at the time. And I like I said, I think my burnout definitely been coming for a long time. And it really did take that kind of break and real kind of ill health for me to actually make a change. And I just now look back and think how sad. If only I'd, been able to read those warning signs a lot sooner. And I think
Yeah.
coming out of the back of that experience, I feel like I am able to see that in myself, because I think people think that something like burnout is a one and done event, but it's something that you need to kind of learn to manage and prevent on an ongoing basis. And I certainly feel like I'm able to recognize those signs and symptoms and behaviors in myself a lot sooner now. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and what I'm hearing you say there is burnout isn't a one-off thing. So if you've been through a
No.
burnout, beware, because you could relapse into another one if you're not taking care of yourself.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think that, I mean, I felt like when I was writing the book, I was writing the book about burnout, and I felt like, there was a lot of pressure and volume of work at that time. And I thought, oh no, like, I could feel that some of those symptoms coming back. And I thought, this would be a huge irony to like burn out whilst writing a book designed to help others about burnout. And the same again, running my own business. You do become vulnerable to extra stress and pressure. So I think it would be so easy to kind of replicate those behaviors that you learned in the corporate world whilst running your own business. And yeah, I think that's the other thing as well. People think when you become an expert in something, that means you're then totally immune to it. And that is absolutely not the case.
Yeah.
I work hard at this every day in the same way that I help my clients do.
Yeah, we can still suffer from things. It doesn't mean that we're
Exactly.
some kind of sort of superhero.
No,
At certain
100%
points.
human.
Yeah, and not immortal to certain issues. So so you mentioned that you have the clinic, and that you've written the book as well, and you work with other experts, don't you, that specialize in different areas of
Yeah.
health and nutrition. And I know that you're available for private health assessments, testing appointments, tailored advice, and coaching. And you also run events, don't you? And you're available as a guest speaker. So what's a kind of a typical day like for you?
Well, it's mixed. Actually, today's been quite interesting because this morning I was putting together a quotation for an event that was more corporate in nature. So, like going into corporates and talking about burnout and health and nutrition and food and mood, those kind of things. Obviously, you and I sat down now recording a podcast, and I always like to have those kind of conversations. I had the morning in clinic, and you're right, clinic is very much focused on root cause health. So we are, interpreting test results and illuminating nutritional and functional imbalances that might be contributing to clients' current symptoms. And then we're then able to tailor advice that's ultra-personalised. So that's the kind of core. And then, yeah, tonight I'm also speaking in a group about mental health and nutrition as well. So it's very varied and diverse, with the clinic being the core of that, which is very much the one-to-one work.
Yeah, it sounds really exciting actually. You have no day is the same,
No.
which is, helps to keep you focused and interested
Yeah.
in the sort of career choice that you've gone down. So you approach healthy nutrition as a way for your clients to gain more energy, mental clarity and balanced moods without them having to reach for any kind of medication, which which sort of leans on the natural way of things. Because I think sometimes now people go to the doctors and it's so easy for a prescription to be written out, so take some of this or do some of that, and
Yeah.
they are all artificial at the end of the day, aren't they? It's not something that's natural.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to say that it's not necessarily one thing or the other either. So in the reverse of that, I have clients who come in who are so adamant that they want to take the natural approach, when actually a medical approach alongside what we're doing would actually be really helpful. So it works both ways, really. We are designed to be complementary to the medical approach rather than instead of. Um, However, we are looking to get to the root cause of something. So if a client was or needed to be on an antidepressant, for example, and at the same time, we know while they were recovering and feeling better, we'd be looking for, well, why have you got to this point? Before, what's caused you to be at this point now, and how in understanding those root cause in pathways and imbalances, can we help support you by making change so that when you are ready to kind of come off the medication, you feel like you're better able to kind of prevent that happening again in the future.
Yeah, so
Um,
sharing knowledge with them so that they know what to look out for,
Well,
so
it's
that
more, yeah, and it's more about them understanding themselves. So that's why we
mm,
use the root cause. We use functional and genetic testing so that we can understand the unique biochemistry of the individual in front of us. And it could be that that person is perhaps deficient in certain nutrients that are required to make the chemicals in your brain that support balanced mood chemistry, or it could be that their digestive function is not optimal, and even though they've got the best diet in the world, they're not absorbing the right amount of nutrients from their food, so we need to work on that. Or it could be that there's a hormonal imbalance that's having an effect on their mood, and we need to look at how we can tackle that. And it's by understanding what that unique combination is for each person that we can really understand what brought them to burnout or anxiety or low mood or fatigue, whatever it is they're presenting with.
yeah, and like you say, it's quite often complex
Yeah, there's
things
never
going
just
on.
one.
It's yes, one thing leads to another and leads to
Yeah.
another and leads to another. So you mentioned, that anxiety, stress, burnout. So all of those things. How can what we eat and our diet and our health in general affect um, those specific health issues? If we can unpack that a little bit more, how can
Yeah.
nutrition positively support those things?
I think it's a two-factor answer. One is about ensuring that we are fueling ourselves with the right building blocks to support healthy mood and energy, and also understanding the things that we're putting in our body that might be disrupting our mood, and perhaps contributing to that foggy brain, lower energy, or perhaps inducing anxiety. So it's about mood supporting nutrients in, and mood disruptors reduced or eliminated where possible.
Yeah, mood disruptors. So having something where you can log your mood on a regular basis would be quite beneficial to people then, would they? So, and then they can start linking that with maybe what they've eaten or what they've done throughout the day to
Yeah,
start to pick out some of those perhaps unhelpful situations.
exactly. And
Mm.
we always look at a food diary from an individual anyway, so we can see whether those patterns are appearing, and then we provide them with access to a food mood journal so that they can in some cases, not everybody, because that is that can be anxiety inducing for some, especially
Yeah,
if
we're
they're in
having
a
to log
high.
something.
Yeah, exactly. But for some, it's really beneficial, and it helps us as practitioners to be able to identify if there are any trigger foods or trigger activities that are happening in that person's life. But the first thing from our perspective is more about what can we add in and almost flood the system with nutrients rather than focusing on what we need to take away, because often the body and the brain is crying out for nourishment, and once the brain and the body is being fed, then we rely less on these other mood disrupting anti-nutrients, if you like, that are kind of sustaining us in the short term.
So what are some of those typical nutrients, the things that need to be added in, or are there any sort of typical ones that people are missing, or in particular women as well?
Yeah, I think that if we kind of like step back a little bit and kind of go sort of big macronutrients, and the one that is really stands out in clinic is protein, and often women just aren't eating enough of that. And protein breaks down to amino acids that are the building blocks for the neurotransmitters in our brain that help us to regulate mood. So without protein, we can't make those chemicals. So it really is an essential building block. So often we need to work on increasing protein and having protein present in every meal. Whereas what we typically see when someone's stressed and burnt out is that they're relying on more carbohydrate-based meals. And that's not to say there's anything wrong with carbohydrates. We actually need to have carbohydrates and fiber alongside the protein to help those proteins get to where they need to go. But the issue is if they're eating just kind of mainly carbohydrate dense meals, breaking down into sugar, and potentially sending them on a blood sugar roller coaster, which is not helpful for anxiety and mood and stress. And then they're not able to then produce those chemicals that, I'm talking about things like dopamine and serotonin that help, give us our get up and go and help us feel happy and contented.
Or feel good hormone.
Yeah, exactly.
Chemicals. Yeah.
So a kind of real top level, like real basic or foundational stuff is, are you consuming enough protein, and do we need to add that in and having it with every meal? And then cascading down from that, then are other vitamins and minerals and micronutrients that all help support production. So it's not just the protein, there are other nutrients needed to help convert some of these nutrients in the body into their active form and to help us even synthesize these chemicals. So this is where we're looking for lots of brightly colored fruit and veg so that we can really access those micronutrients. I think when we think about how we can support mental well-being from a diet perspective, there's so many different ways of eating out there that I think the message can be quite confusing. And I started off the conversation by talking about how, we're all different and we're all unique and we'll all have different requirements. That being said, the research is really clear that from a mental health perspective, the Mediterranean style eating pattern really does provide access to all the nutrients that we would need to support positive mental health. And where those nutrients feature, there is a reduced risk of becoming depressed. So I think that is a real evidence-based approach. So if nothing else, even if you understand nothing about your own unique biochemistry, if you look to start by adopting that Mediterranean eating style, which features lots of protein, which features lots of micronutrients and colour, like we've been talking about, lots of healthy fats in there as well, which help protect the brain, then that's a really good starting point from a mental health perspective.
Yeah. So what would be a sort of good choice for maybe breakfast, lunch, and an evening meal for a Mediterranean style diet?
I think so. Again, thinking about a protein style breakfast. So if you're someone who's kind of time poor and shooting off out the door to go to work, then something that you can prep ahead the night before might be beneficial. So something like a chia pudding. So chia seeds are a nice alternative to kind of oats, because they're slightly higher in protein. It can be made in advance the night before. Lots of nice berries can be added to that, so you're getting the colour, the protein, and it's ready to go. Or maybe a nice smoothie, again, where you can kind of put all the ingredients into the cup the night before, apart from the liquid, and then add the liquid in the morning, blend it up, ready to go. But always making sure that there's protein in there, healthy fats, and some nice fruit and veg, so balanced. I'm going to answer the dinner question, if that's okay, because I think that like that dinner time, I think, is the one that people have the most control over, because they tend to have a bit more time. They're at home, so that they're able to kind of prepare something. So again, thinking about where the protein's coming from. So maybe something like salmon with Mediterranean vegetables and rice, just keeping it really simple. We don't have to like think about, cooking a gourmet meal. We don't have to be Nigella or Jamie Oliver in the kitchen. It's just about putting those elements together and making it taste nice and that you enjoy it. And then what I advocate to my clients is to make 2 of whatever you're making, so that you can then take whatever the leftovers is for lunch the next day. And then that avoids the, getting to kind of 1, 2 o'clock, not having had any lunch, and then thinking, oh no, I'm going to go out the door and straight into the nearest convenient place, and then perhaps have something that perhaps isn't quite as helpful for our mood as if you had something ready, because then your brain's going to know, actually, this is the quickest option. I'm going to have the thing that I prepared before. So
yeah, that's a great idea, and you're absolutely right. It is the quickest option.
yeah, exactly.
It's
And that's the
already
thing.
cooked.
Yeah, when you're stressed, you're in survival mode. So the brain, the brain isn't always making the best choices for you, because it thinks it's under threat. It thinks its very survival is at risk. So it wants the thing that's the quickest, the easiest, and most convenient, and normally the most energy dense. And if you've got something there already, and perhaps you have gone a little bit too long and you're wondering what the next meal should be, then if you've got something prepared, your brain's more likely to go, okay, that's the easiest, I'm going to eat this, and it's going to satisfy you. Whereas if you haven't got that, then you're heading out the door to one of those convenient chains
Yes,
that's going to hand you
out there.
yeah, that's going to hand you something that's perhaps full of mood disruptors.
Yeah, I love that, actually, mood disruptors. I'm going to use that at some point,
You can
because
have it.
yeah, I do notice sometimes that my mood gets disrupted sometimes, and quite often I am starting to put it down to the things that I do. So if I've had a busy week at work and I haven't had much time outside, that affects me. But yeah, if I have too much that's not, as you say, varied, protein based, colourful, if it's a little bit more on the beige side,
Yeah.
then that's, chicken aside, shall we say?
Yeah.
That's I can kind of tell those things, and I was starting to feel a little bit guilty when you were talking about eating for what you prepared the night before, because I've been on a 4-day hike in the Yorkshire Dales. So when I got back last night, my partner cooked a lasagna. He does a great lasagna. So there was a third left, which I had for my lunch today, which was lovely. But equally, there's not a massive amount of fruit and veg in there. Veg in there. A few onions, tinned tomatoes. Red meat, which probably isn't as good as perhaps a turkey mince alternative.
No, I would use the red meat, to be honest. I think
You
it'd
would?
be
Okay.
yeah. I've actually just had a beef ragout for my lunch, so
Yeah. Oh, I don't feel too bad now then. Thanks,
no,
Rachel.
I think with anything with red meat, I think if you choose a higher quality source of meat and just have less of it, then that's kind of ticking the kind of whole environmental box, and also health benefits. But we all need different things. I'm particularly low in iron, so I actually need to have a higher amount of those kind of foods. So I think, thinking it always has to be lean meat, I think is perhaps, yeah, not necessary. I think your lunch sounds lovely. All I would have done was add a handful of salad alongside it, and that's perfect.
Yeah, we haven't got any salad in, because normally it's left to me to do the shopping, and we've not been here. But yes, I agree. Maybe salad rather than perhaps garlic bread, so that you don't have the pasta and the bread.
Yeah, because then you're kind of really making it quite a carbohydrate dense, like sugary meal, and then the amount of protein that you've got in the beef ragout is probably not going to be enough to balance out the amount of carbohydrates you're having. Whereas if you've grabbed a handful of mixed salad that you've already got prepared, for example, lots of stores now have salad that's already kind of ready to go, so you're not. We can use convenience for our advantage. We don't have to think that we have to create everything from scratch.
Yeah.
So these kind of ready mixed bags of salad are brilliant for just kind of grabbing and sticking alongside and the meal, like you've just said there, because that takes 2 seconds. Requires
there is a lot
very
of
little
choice,
thought.
isn't there, as well? You can have sort of the different strengths and tanginess, and or a crunchy salad, a sweet salad. There's quite a lot of choice out there for people to add that. Just to, and it's an easy way to add something to the side, cut down the portion a little bit of whatever else it is you're having, and have some leafy greens and that sort of thing. I have a question for you based on, so you say protein is probably one of the major things that people can add more into their diet. And somebody told me once that protein is what you should eat first. So if you got, eggs, for example, and a couple of other things on a plate, say you had eggs with some whole grain toast, perhaps, and maybe some tomatoes or something like that. Is it any more beneficial to eat the egg first, or is it fine just to kind of mix them all up? Because I like mixing foods up. I'm not one of these people that will have, my potato and then I'll have my meat and then I'll have carrots or something like that. I like to have a little bit of everything going in at the same time. I have a burst of flavour.
Yeah. So the theory, you're right. There is a lot of popular talk about this at the moment, and it's all around balancing blood sugar, and it comes from the I want to say belief, but that's not quite the right word. The knowledge that we have that carbohydrates have the potential to be more rapidly absorbed into the bloodstream, digested quicker and more rapidly absorbed into the bloodstream than protein and fats, which tend to be digested slower and absorbed more slower into the bloodstream, which is where this then theory comes from of in which order that you should eat your food. However, what I'm saying to you actually is that it's more about having all those elements on the plate and consuming them together, and hopefully will slow that down. But again, we're all unique. So to say that one thing would spike your blood sugar or not spike your blood sugar is far too generalized, and that we should all be eating our eggs first before our toast, again, really generalized, because we all digest and absorb our food differently. So the main thing for me is just creating balance on the plate. So if you're having toast on its own, there's no protein there to slow that absorption down. If you start your day with toast, you've got the potential for a blood sugar spike and then a blood sugar crash, and then you're then reaching for something else, carbohydrate. Whereas if you have eggs on toast with maybe some veg and fibre, that has then potential to slowly be absorbed and create more of a stable blood sugar curve for you. And I'm using words really carefully here, like may and possibly, because we're all so different.
Yeah. You can only judge that by having tests and things and monitoring what you take.
You'd have to be wearing a glucose monitor to kind of really understand that for yourself. But most of us don't need to do that. Most of us can just follow the basic principle of including protein or healthy fats, and ideally a combination of the two, with every meal to help stabilize blood sugar.
I guess that's the thing, that those spikes really, diabetes, and there's a lot of diseases and things, isn't there, that can be avoided, or type 2 diabetes, should I say, avoided, if we look after what we eat and prevent those spikes from happening all the time. Are there any other things that, like diabetes, sort of conditions or, diseases perhaps, that are typical of a bad diet?
Where can you that would probably be too hard for me to list, Anna. I would say that there is, I think, most chronic disease that we see now in the modern Western world potentially could be attributed back to how and what we are consuming, in the same way that utilising a food and lifestyle approach can also be beneficial for some of those diseases as well. But the idea being that we're eating in a way that's preventative rather than after the fact, because sometimes when things have progressed too far, then it's harder to then be able to reverse something. The point about blood sugar, I think, as well, is not necessarily about diabetes, because if you're tired or feeling foggy brained or anxious, or perhaps experiencing hormonal imbalances, that can actually also be linked to the interplay between insulin and cortisol, the two hormones that regulate our blood sugar. So you don't have to be an overt diabetic or in pre-diabetic even, for blood sugar imbalances to be affecting the way that you're feeling. So yeah, it's a foundational thing for us as nutritionists to establish good blood sugar balance for all of our clients.
Place to start.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you mentioned about sort of the time and progression of things. I mean, it's not always easy sort of for young children, but is there an ideal age when, we should, as children or as teens or as adults, or that we should be having a balanced diet and paying attention to what it is that we eat? Because I mean, for children, a lot of it depends on the parents, doesn't it? But there's so much that's thrown at us for convenience, ultra processed foods, these big brands, it's in front of us all the time.
Yeah. So I would say that, if we can eat in that a nice, healthy, balanced way throughout life, then we're giving ourselves the best chance to prevent some of these chronic diseases. So I don't think there's ever going to be a too early age to start that at that. I also think that we don't know yet the impact of all of this, because the more that our foods and diet become more convenient, we need a certain amount of time to expire to be able to kind of observe and study the impact that that's having. So we know enough from the scientific data now, based on the way perhaps our parents and the generation before were eating, and the impact that that's had. But the way that the generations are eating now, then we still don't know what that looks like, because that not enough time has passed for us to be able to understand that clearly. So yeah, I think the sooner we can become educated about it, I think, I really understand that food is information that is fueling the body, and it's not, and it can also be a pleasurable experience. It's a cultural and societal event to kind of get together and enjoy food. And I think that we just need to kind of have the extra piece there where we think, well, actually, and it also, fuels good physical and mental health as well.
Yeah, and having the right food will help us if we exercise, and taking that before we exercise and after we exercise, I'm guessing makes a big difference in that performance and how we feel as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a sports nutritionist, so I can't necessarily answer that in complete detail, but yeah, 100% that they will find. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? There's so much to it.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's come on to your book then, if we can, the
Yes.
Burnout Bible,
Mm-hmm.
which is how to tackle fatigue and emotional overwhelm naturally. And I know that's available in various places online. You're in Waterstones as well, which is fantastic. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So I'll ask a little bit about the content of the book shortly.
Yeah.
But what encouraged you? Because for me, as a budding writer, and I've got quite a lot of different projects ahead of me, shall we say? What
Yeah.
encouraged you to write the book?
I think there's probably two things that converged at the right time. One is, I think, growing up, I think like many people, I had that kind of dream of being a writer, and thought that I would write a book one day. And probably at that early age, I thought it would be some kind of detective novel, and then life happens and you kind of forget about it a little bit and go off and do your career. So I think there was an element of always wanting to do it, and perhaps then not really having that much to say. And then fast forward to running the clinic and having been through a burnout experience, I was finding that I just loved helping the women that come into clinic, and we were getting such great feedback from them. But ultimately, because it's private healthcare, it's not necessarily accessible to everybody. So I decided that I wanted to help more people, and the way for me to be able to do that was to take the kind of as much of the knowledge that I had that could be generalized and put it into a book that would then be more accessible to people. And I had something to say because I was suddenly an expert in this topic about burnout. So yeah, I think that the stars aligned at the right time, and that's when it became a project that I could actually deliver.
Yeah, I love the project, the process of doing it and the outcome of it. So who would benefit most from reading the book, and what kind of content can a reader expect?
Yeah. So the book was written with tired and wired career women in mind. However, many men have also read the book, and I guess however you identify, you will get something out of that book. Perhaps there is one chapter, the hormone chapter, which is really kind of specific to um, women, but the rest of the book I think will be beneficial for anyone, however they identify. And then in terms of what to expect, it's really in kind of three main sections. The first part is really about understanding what burnout is. The second part is then getting to the root cause, so understanding all the different types of imbalances that might be at play in a burnout picture. And then the third part then is the what to do about it. And I guide the reader through my 4-step mood boosting method, which could have also been called burnout beating method or resilience increasing method or fatigue fighting, but all those things sounded a bit wordy, so I chose mood boosting method because mood means like have the sense of prevailing emotion and how you want to feel, and I always think about burnout and how I wanted to feel instead, and that's when those other words came out. So I thought mood boosting method worked the best. Yeah, and then at the end there are some recipes, which then might help the reader to actually go away and implement some of the things that we've talked about in the book as well.
Yeah, so people can start making changes pretty much
Absolutely.
immediately from
Yeah,
reading the book.
absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, starting the day off right with a smoothie, something
Yeah,
that they tastes good and
yeah,
it's packed full of the
yeah,
good stuff as well. Yeah. So are there? I mean, I'm thinking back now to when I sort of felt as though I was at that burnout stage. I mean, I was also as well very kind of highly energized all the time, almost
wired.
unable to, yeah, relates to what you was how you sort of identified the target audience really of the
Yeah,
readers for the book. And yeah, and I wasn't sleeping great. I was sleeping, but I was getting less sleep. You know, I was working till late at night. I was getting up really early in the morning. So I was starting work at about 5 a.m.
yeah,
Not to be part of the 5 a.m. club as we hear about, but
yeah,
just because I had so much on.
yeah,
And it was really was not even burning the candle at both ends, just burning the one end.
yeah.
Which was definitely work end because at the time I didn't really have a social life. It was just all about work.
Yeah.
So yeah, are there any things that you can sort of say as well as that people can look out for to think actually I am maybe approaching this burnout period. It's time to start making some
Yeah.
changes, you know, so that they don't actually get there.
Yeah, and I think you know you hit the nail on the head with some of the most obvious symptoms. So I think when we are feeling wired, I guess the psychological type symptoms are the ones we associate with burnout the most. So that the feeling of fatigue or the feeling of anxiety and wired, overwhelm, foggy brain, so it's harder to concentrate or perhaps perform at your best as it would be normally, and changes in mood generally. They're all like your kind of typical burnout cluster of symptoms. But then also there are other things because burnout is a very much a whole body event. So you might start noticing changes in your digestive function. You might also notice changes in immune function. So getting frequent colds and coughs, or perhaps it just takes an awful lot longer to recover from the one that you get. And also for women in particular, they may notice changes in their menstrual cycle if they are of reproductive age. And that's all because when we are in fight or flight mode, we're in survival, and the brain and the body down-regulate processes that it views as non-essential for survival. So it's not important to be digesting food when we're running away from a bear. It's definitely not important to be kind of repairing the the tissue, and it's 100% not important to be reproducing. So that's why we notice the changes in these kind of physical symptoms that we wouldn't necessarily associate with burning out.
Mm.
But yeah, there are a broad spectrum of symptoms, and everyone's different what they might experience. So you said there you felt really wired. And that can perhaps be more like stage 2 burnout, whereas the kind of flat, exhausted, can't function phase of burnout is what would kind of happen at the end, having
Mm.
sustained that middle part for too long, perhaps.
Yeah, I think I was quite lucky that I noticed
in
and was
time.
able to make some changes, in time with that. And part of that for me was not being able to say no to people and always being a people pleaser. So that is sort of a psychological belief, if you like, that I played out.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And one of the steps, in fact, the final steps in my mood boosting method, it is called reframe. So it is kind of getting into that deeper work of understanding what those limiting beliefs are that might have brought you to where you are in burnout, or might be the things that are kind of making you more susceptible to burnout, and tackling those. And they're deliberately the last step, because if you're already burnt out, you're not going to be in a position to kind of do mindset work and work on yourself. However, if you're before that, if you're hoping to prevent burnout, then it's absolutely something that you can do now to work on, to help make sure that you change those beliefs for yourself. Things like, I can get help, I can delegate, and so perhaps more, I can ask, have the conversation about whether someone else can share this workload with me. That perhaps before it may have been a limiting belief of, I've got to do it all, I need to be seen to be the best, I need to be doing all this, because if I don't, then I'm not good enough at my job, and etc etc etc.
They're all interlinked, aren't they, when you start mentioning it in that way. And I think that's where you've mentioned the food diary and the mood diary, and making a note of things, and just journaling in general. How have you felt, what sort of caused you to feel this way? And we are able to identify certain things. I think we don't give ourselves credit to identify where some of these unhelpful behaviors and the triggers of those might be coming from. And of course, helping to cleanse that and eat cleanly is just going to help to pick us up from that point of view. So you mentioned about some recipes and some smoothies and things being in the back of the book, and you have got quite a few free resources. So what sort of things do you have available for people, and where can they find you? Where can people reach out to you? I'll include all these in the show notes as well.
Okay, so on the website, which is www.re-nutrition.co.uk, there are a number of resources that the book points to, that are available to download for free. So all the recipes from the Burnout Bible are there to download as one PDF guide. There's also a separate smoothie builder guide, so it kind of helps you to understand how to put together a balanced smoothie, so that it is a complete meal, and some recipe suggestions. There's also a simple belief change tool. So if you are thinking that some of those limiting beliefs are holding you back, then there's an exercise that you can undertake. And again, that tool is there to download for free as well.
Brilliant.
And we should soon have a burnout quiz. So that is coming soon on the website, which will help you to identify what stage of burnout that you're at, and provide you some tools and advice depending on which stage that you're at. But coming soon.
No, that sounds like a really handy resource, and something that anybody can do, not just those high flying career women.
Exactly, anyone,
but anybody who's employed, anybody who's of any age, any gender, how they identify. So all great stuff there. And you've mentioned the website. And where is the best place for people to buy your book, so that of course you get the most benefit from that?
Well, there is plenty of place. But from my perspective, I just want it out there, so I don't really mind where people buy the book from. It's available online in your usual places, so Amazon, Waterstones Online, WH Smith, etc. You can also buy it direct from the publisher, Practical Inspiration. I think they have an offer on at the moment, actually. So depending on when you're listening to this, it's their 10-year anniversary birthday. So I'm pretty sure they've got some discounts on the whole of their portfolio. And then, like you said, shops. So it's in Waterstones. It's also available in some local shops in my area, in the Wirral and Liverpool as well.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, thank you, Rachel. I've thoroughly enjoyed chatting to you. Before we wrap up, is there anything else that you think people out there should know? Any hints or tips, or and just a lasting, I don't know if that's the right word, a closing statement?
I think my closing statement would just be to be kind to yourself. So there's lots of advice out there, and what you're striving for isn't perfection. It's just to try and give yourself the best chance. If you are struggling, then I would just keep it really simple. Ask yourself questions like, have I had enough to drink today? And just focus on hydration. And that one simple step can make a massive difference. So don't feel like it's all got to be done overnight.
Yeah, and that's a really key point, isn't it? Hydration, making sure you drink enough. And I always know if I haven't drunk enough because of the colour of what's in the bottom of the toilet.
Yeah, and there's lots of research as well that like even like a small percentage of dehydration can increase anxiety, and increasing hydration can reduce anxiety. So that's a really simple thing that we can all do that's free. So
yeah, and we don't have to have that glass of water in its entirety, do we? We can sip and just keep sipping gently through.
See the size of the one I've been drinking while we've been chatting.
Yeah, mine's here. I think that's one. Is it 750? I did have a litre one, but it didn't fit in the side of my bag, so I got a smaller one. But yeah, that's one thing that I do pay quite a lot of attention to, water, and it's obvious to me when I haven't had enough.
Yeah.
So. Well, wonderful. Thank you once again, Rachel, for chatting with me and for kicking off the nutrition series. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I've learned a lot myself. I've made quite a number of notes, so thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to today's Writing with Purpose podcast. Having conversations with fellow writers or adventure enthusiasts brings two of my biggest loves in life together, writing and nature connection. I've been a copywriter and content creator for 23 years, but my passion is writing for wellbeing, and I'm on a mission to share the benefits that putting pen to paper has for personal wellness with as many people as possible. If you want to learn more about writing for your wellbeing and journaling techniques, please connect with me in my Facebook group, Journaling with Anna.